Led by a lifelong interest in healing, Dr. Linda Salvin pursued an advanced degree in epidemiology. Then, after dramatic near-death experiences, Dr. Linda saw the other side and returned with gifts of insight, visions, and revealed wisdom. Now those gifts are ongoing, and she's here to share them with you. Get ready to be amazed. It's time for Dr. Linda Salvin's Psychic Solutions podcast with America's original radio psychic, Dr. Linda Salvin, offering up her always fascinating blend of psychic psychology, clairvoyant insights, and expert guests and alternative healing methods. So pull up a chair and get ready for a visit with the one and only Dr. Linda. And now, live from Los Angeles, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Linda Salvin.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another live Psychic Solutions podcast. I am Dr. Linda Salvin. I'm a MPH in epidemiology, PhD in metaphysics, and I'm your host every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, right here on the various networks that you're watching, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, W4WN, iTunes, iHeart, and all the 98 other platforms out there. So today I'm going to be interviewing somebody who's calling in from Alaska, in Fairbanks, Alaska. And we're going to talk about life in the midnight sun. It's the land of the midnight sun because they have about 72 days of sunlight. Absolutely no dark. I don't know how that works. I don't know what that feels like, but we're going to find out. We're going to talk to Devin Swanson. Let's bring him on right now. And we're going to start to talk about life in Alaska. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, how's it going? Welcome. Thank you.
You're very welcome, and I'm glad you could finally make it. The trees look beautiful. It's blooming. When I was there, it was all snow and bare, and I met Devin along the way, and I've asked him to come on the show to experience his life. He's a native of the Fairbanks area. So give a little background of growing up in Fairbanks, which is like anybody else. You're growing up somewhere, but it's a little different in Alaska than it is what you call the lower 48. And I know your family's from Minnesota, so you've traveled a lot. So it's not like that's all you know, but it's different. So start talking about where you've come from, and then we'll go into what's going on.
Yeah. So it's crazy because even from when I was like a young kid, if I'm in my mid 30s now, the changes are just so vast with climate change. And, you know, it used to be much colder seemingly than it is now in the winter time. This summer, it's a beautiful day today, but we're probably not hitting 70. And generally we would have been in the 70s by now. So weather is definitely the main crazy factor that I've experienced directly. Like you said, though, growing up here, we're still only a state of less than 800,000 people. Fairbanks specifically, the greater area is probably about 100,000 people. And so there's just so many little interesting factors about it. Like, you know, everybody, whether you want to or not. So going to high school or middle school, etc., you either knew these people from sports or you knew them from going to school. Or like for me, my parents lived on separate sides of town growing up in a family that my parents divorced. So I had friends on both sides of town, plus my hockey friends, plus my school friends. And it was a gift and a curse that everyone knew everything about everybody. And I don't know, the older I've got, it's became more of a task kind of obnoxiousness, more so than a good thing, just because of your privacy and whatever, and, you know, whatever your business dealings might be. But overall, growing up in Fairbanks, I've enjoyed it. It's a good community. I have a daughter who's 7. And so like her school is just right down the street from my house here. And, you know, I'm starting to see, though, the same little things with the intricacies of growing up. And, you know, she's only 7, but starting to see some of the like things that I witnessed when I was her age. So she actually got on a plane to go on a trip with her grandma and grandpa this morning.
Oh, how sweet. How long should be gone?
She'll be gone for, I believe it's 8 or 9 days. They're staying in Seattle today and tonight, and then they're going to North Carolina. So for us, talking about me being able to have traveled, you have to travel if you live here. The immense darkness in the winter. So I love to be outside this time of year. You referenced the 72 straight days of pure sun. You have to soak that up. It's just your mental health. Otherwise, it wasn't so much a thing when I was younger, but this past winter was probably maybe my toughest winter for various reasons, but starting with the cold and the dark more so out the gate. So
Devin, do you have 72 days of darkness like you have 72 days of light? Does it transfer almost the same amount of time?
yeah, pretty much. So the sun, it's not, so for Fairbanks, we're in the interior. If you look at Alaska, and then there's legs either way, one, the Aleutians towards Asia, and then the western side towards Seattle area, the legs of Alaska, say. But the center of Alaska, Fairbanks is like where the heart would be if it was a body. And so we're kind of in the middle. They call it the interior. And so for us, it's not 100% dark so the darkest day of the year, winter solstice, is December 21st. And I believe we're getting, sorry, this truck.
That's okay. Of course, that's okay.
One second. It's garbage day. Interesting timing. Anyways, so for us, the it's not pitch black 24/7, but it feels that way because as a kid growing up going to school, you take the bus, it was dark. Depending on your school and the windows in the school, you might not have any for most of the day. And then you get on the bus after school and it's dark. So the daylight is only about 4 hours that time of year, and it's stagnant from winter solstice. You're not gaining any for at least 2 or 3 weeks.
Wow.
And so it's like a celebration for me, at least, and I imagine many others, where once you're starting to see 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 7 minutes. I remember I was explaining to you when we would be chatting when you were here, like, today we gained this many more minutes.
Yeah.
And so that's, at a certain point, you're gaining about an hour per day. And that was huge. And so we're now at the window of it's pure sunlight. And yeah, I can't. So for us traveling, I'm happy for my daughter's travels, but you don't usually travel this time of year because you want to save your travels for when it's so dark.
Oh, I see. Of course, to get out of the darkness. Sure.
Right. And so you want to soak up how nice Fairbanks can be and Alaska in general to really, I guess, if you're going to continue living here, like I'm going to while I have a young daughter, you kind of want to fall back in love with it again. And so I had a former job where I did get to experience the North Slope of Alaska in small doses, fortunately, but I've seen it in both summer and winter. Up there, it is literally the sun does not rise. So
how far is that past the Arctic? Way past the Arctic then?
Yeah, so from Fairbanks to where I'm referencing, so there's the village of Barrow, and it's about 350 miles from Fairbanks. And so if Anchorage is about 350, 400 south of Fairbanks, it's about the same distance to the top of Alaska, which is, and that's where the oil field is, where lots of industry, obviously in Alaska, is oil related. So lots of my friends, my dad.
The pipeline.
Correct. That's where it starts. And then it goes all the way down to Valdez, down in the Anchorage area, not right near Anchorage, but it's on that side of Alaska, going like 800, 900 miles all the way from up top. And so they see it where like right now it would be longer than 72 days for them of daylight, and the darkness, it truly, the sun is never rising in those deepest, darkest times of winter for them. And then that much colder
Do
as
people
well.
add the artificial lights in their home to deflect the depression and the anxiety that comes along with not having sun? Do people put the lights inside so that they feel like they've got sunlight, or that their skin or that their mind is starting to warm up? Do a lot of people have that?
Yeah, you hear a lot about people having the happy lights, I think they
Happy
refer
lights.
to them
Okay.
as. It's probably something I should invest in, and I guess I'm surprised I do not have myself, but I'll just immerse myself with, turning on all the lights in my living area wherever I'm at. Other than sleeping, you pretty much want to have some lights on. And depending what you're doing, like I said, if you're in a school building or an office where you don't have windows, I mean, little things like that do make a huge difference. And for me, it's not so much the cold; it's the darkness.
I bet. I bet.
Uh, you're
So
not really outside unless you have to be going to and from your vehicle. But most people like myself, I have a garage, and then if I go to the store, you either leave your vehicle running or you have auto start, where you can remote start your vehicle from a key fob or from your phone nowadays. And so your
does it
car's
freezes because it freezes so quickly because it gets cold so fast?
right. So yeah, if you don't have to be outside, you're trying to make it as comfortable as possible. So um, I have lots of respect for those folks that actually do work outside by choice or just because that's what they have to do for a living. But yeah, you're not spending very much time outside. So the cold, and I mean, you've seen some cold temperatures when you were here.
It was 24 below when I was up at the Arctic at the Coldfoot in Wiseman. It was 24 below. And I really felt at one point that my nose or mouth was going to fall off. I couldn't talk. I was so cold. And then I went inside the little cabin and warmed up and came back out and then took more pictures of the Northern Lights. And then most of the time, though, it was tolerable, even though listening to you and seeing the trees when I was there 2 months ago, I was standing on top of rivers and I was at the Yukon. It was frozen, and wherever I went, I fell in the snow 4 feet below. When we went to, I sunk at Santa. I had to have them pull me up. Yeah, because the snow gets packed, and the new pack comes on. It's soft, you sink. And even though it was roped off, I decided to go check it out anyway. And of course, I sunk because it's like quicksand. Some of the snow is so soft, but it goes deep. And you have to, if you're just stuck by yourself, it's really difficult to get out. But the cold, I love cold weather. I do. This is why I went not just to see the lights, but I'm in LA and it gets boring for me, having been here all my life, except at college when I was in Michigan and I had two winters. But I love it. I don't know that I could tolerate a year of it. I don't know. I would love to see the spring and summer and everything's defrosted and thawed out. So your rivers are probably flowing, and was it the Channel River?
Chena, yeah.
Chena, okay, yeah. So I bet it's beautiful now. Or take some pictures and send it to me so I can see the difference, because all I saw was snow, people. When I was there, everything was snow. And it's gorgeous in the snow. But after a while, snow gets boring, just like, sometimes hot weather gets boring. But you've got a huge mix, but you go to extremes in Alaska. And yeah, I would probably get one of the lights and see if it doesn't help your moods. And stabilize. That's why they have them, because they know what goes on up there. What do you do? I know you got some great restaurants. I visited those, obviously, but what do you do for activity? Are you still active in sports, or are you going to concerts? Or it doesn't, when I was there, I didn't see like a lot to do, but I didn't know where I was to figure out the town as to activities. They got a gorgeous museum at the University of Alaska. I mean, I got around town and I did a lot of activities, but as a resident, what do you do?
Yeah, so it's definitely one of those places that you have to make the most out of it, and you can't make up excuses for not getting out and doing things, especially if you're one complaining about such. So we don't get the big name concerts, and every once in a while we'll have someone very relevant come through. For example, the biggest one that's came in my lifetime was Elton John, which obviously is on the extreme spectrum of extreme relevancy. clearly, in my eyes, he must have been doing some kind of personal vendetta where he had to like have went to every US state and performed. Otherwise, he's way too big of a deal for us here. So the whole town goes to something like that, and he had actually multiple shows to allow that many more people to see him, which was cool. And that was when I was probably middle school age. And
Wow. Wow. That's a long time ago. Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, he's a legend, and I can understand that. But it's one of those things, I guess, is the example. You just have to do it if it's here. Like, there's only so much to do, depending on what your interests are. So obviously, if you're into hiking and the outdoors or fishing and hunting, we have so much like opportunity for that. But I grew up not really doing a lot of those things. Sure, I would be outdoors playing with my friends, but my dad was always working in the oil field. So in terms of someone that's like my fisherman friend or father that's going to teach me the ropes or the hunting, you know, obviously involving guns and needing a gun that, you know, I wouldn't legally be able to purchase or whatnot. I didn't get to do those kind of things as much. And so they haven't really been a part of my life, even as I've gotten older. And I do have friends that are involved with, you know, more outdoorsy hunting, fishing, Alaskan activities. But I think more so for me, being more the version of raised appreciating Alaska and Fairbanks in particular, and thinking it's really neat to be able you say you're from here, because every different friend you have that goes off to college, the people that they go to school with and become their close friends and whatnot, whether male or female, they end up referring to you as Alaska. Like, that's your name. Your name isn't Devin or whatever.
Susie. Yeah.
Your name is Alaska, because there's this, for it being a part of the US, a lot of people have not been able to come up here. A lot of our tourism is either folks coming up on cruises that tend to normally be older people, maybe like the trip of their lifetime type of a situation, or like when you were up, it was Aurora tourism to see the northern.
Yeah, that's what I was lucky. I got them 3 or 4 nights. 2 nights.
You see a lot more Americans traveling for Northern Lights now, but when I was growing up, it was predominantly a lot of Japanese and Chinese tourism. And so there was a kind of a large disconnect from actually seeing them in years past, because they all are together and generally on these big tours where, unless you ran into them at a restaurant, you weren't seeing them with today's day and age with people are using shared rides, going out more independently out of their tours and whatnot. And it's obviously great for our economy here. Winter and summer tourism, we're dependent on it. And so it was a really interesting period of time with COVID. And then, you know, some of the hotel chains, big ones like Princess and whatnot that are like worldwide, some didn't open the next season after, you know, the worst of COVID, and the boats weren't coming up or the cruise ships weren't coming up. And so, I mean, we're still seeing the effect of how that negatively.
Of course, it hurts the economy because you guys depend on that. You depend on that.
The hospitality service, the restaurants and the bars and places to grab a drink, you've really seen an effect of how it negatively, and still is, it's hopefully on the upswing, but surely no business in town in that kind of industry has had a better year than before COVID, because just even the natural residents of, you know, being especially such a cold and isolated place. Now think about, we're being told that you can't leave your house. These restaurants can't be open. These places to go socialize cannot be open. The sports games cannot have their games.
Yeah, they shut everything down.
For our local colleges and local junior hockey teams or whatever, things that were something to do. And so a lot of people, I think, have just, they got used to being more reclusive. And obviously the cold weather and the darkness, it's like a double entendre, and like bad. And, you know, it was negative all around for everybody that those things were being shut down. And it's already cold and dark, but now you're stuck in your house, literally, unless you just want to go aimlessly drive around, at which point there's a good chance it's probably still dark out. But just to get out of your house, I mean, it was something to do. So yeah, COVID was a whole nother experience in Alaska.
I bet. I didn't even think of it that way. You're right. I mean, if wow, you've already got the winter and then you got everything else shut down. I mean, what's left? That must have been really, really difficult. At least it's all changed now. As far as your family is concerned and your work and everything, do you find that most of you guys get together more during the spring, summer because of the weather, or do people, your family and friends, make it a point to get together during the winter? I mean, when I was up there, it was the end of winter actually, because it was March, but it was still dark. It was still freezing. And I think right after I left, it started to warm up. I was at the tail end of the long part of the winter. And there's a whole group of people that love dark winter, cold, the lights, the northern part, like where I went up to Coldfoot, which has 30 people. You know, it's not very populous. And then they've got Wiseman that has 10 people. I mean, it was very isolated and I love it. It was a whole new experience, but a lot of people aren't into that. And a lot of people don't understand all of the beauty of the wilderness that's really to take advantage of. You know, there's so much there that they don't understand, I think. But to be isolated and be forced down, that would have been a lot more difficult.
Yeah.
So drug abuse and domestic violence and alcoholism, it went up all over the country, all over the world, because there was nothing else to do but get loaded. And that's what they kept open with the pot stores and the liquor stores, as opposed to the clothing stores or bowling alleys or the gyms. It was all, don't get me started. We can't mention that word on the show, but we went through it and now we're on the other side of it, but we're all transformed and we're all different and we're all kind of fuzzy as far as our thought process. We've gone through what I call it the hallway of transformation. And we are still on this little platform till 2030 until the whole movement is in place with what they're doing out there. But you're expressing your life really beautifully as to what life is like. So you get up, you go to work, you take your kid to school, and you go out. Like when I was there, you took her sledding and you go out to eat and you do life. But it's just for the average person that does not have sunset like at 6 or 7 or 8 at night, but it might be, 2 months down the road. I can't conceive what that would be like. Like I'm in a room now where the blinds are down because I can't have too much sun when I'm doing the show online here, but it's a lot of light. We'll have sunset tonight, probably around 8. It'll start getting dark because we're moving into summer. But you guys are just going to keep going. How do you figure out when it's time to sleep? Do you just get tired and then it's to shut it out with the darkened curtains and your body knows you need to sleep? Do you program?
It'll look like how it does behind me currently.
Yeah.
Like just the same for the rest of today. And so.
Yeah, for 2 more months.
Yeah. So.
How do you program yourself, Devin? How do you say, I got to get to sleep? I'm tired.
Fortunately for my actual house, I get great sunlight during the day, but my bedrooms are on the back side of my home. And so the light is not shining in directly. But a lot of people you for sure have, they call blackout curtains so that it's just pitch black in your room. Even though it's really bright outside. But for me, not liking it being dark so often, it just doesn't affect me the same. Of course, I'll still put my blinds down, but I might not put them down all the way because I don't mind it. I appreciate a little bit of the light since it's, again, I'm trying to take in as much as I can while I can. So touching again, though, on what you were saying about doing with friends and family, I think with family, because there's so many different holidays and birthdays and whatnot throughout the year, it doesn't matter as much with the time of year. And you're trying to support one another emotionally through the cold and the dark. And of course, with me having a daughter, they want to see her whenever they can. But with your friends, yeah, it's more of a little bit of a challenge to, kind of, I feel like it's more common with women to, have that coffee date or lunch date on Wednesday every week with this friend, this day with this friend. I think that's less common with guys because we're a little bit more go with the flow as it starts raining on me here.
You want, of course, you want to move inside, just pick up the camera and go, or do you want to have a little sprinkle?
I'm okay with a little sprinkle. And that's what's so funny. I was helping my uncle earlier. He's in the process of moving, and we were talking about how the summer has been so weird because lots of years we'll have 70 degrees plus in April. And I think we've maybe only had it 1 or 2 days so far if we're at the end of May almost. And he needed transportation help earlier. So we were driving together. I had to drop him off at a U-Haul or whatever. And I was like, look how beautiful it is right now. And when I woke up, pure blue skies throughout the sky. And I said, but guess what? At about 2 o'clock, if it's 2:15, 2:30 right now, I said, it's going to act like it's going to rain or it's going to rain.
It is. It just shifts.
So
that fast.
And, it'll probably only be for a minute. There's a big cloud up here and it's, but so that's the whole nother aspect of our summers is it's this very tightrope-ish thing with rain and our relationship with it, because it's good for the, greening up of everything and the grass for people's yards and this and that. And I appreciate a good rain every now and again, but the vast size of Alaska, how huge it is, comes lightning strikes, obviously. And we don't get crazy storms like the Midwest or places that have tornadoes, because Alaska doesn't get that we don't get tornadoes here. And so we don't see a ton of lightning, but if it's pouring rain out in the middle of wherever Alaska, lightning is happening inevitably somewhere, and it causes forest fires. And so you're in California, know all about that, but different than there being so much smaller and so much more inhabited. Here, we have tons of wildland firefighters, but if it's not inflicting damage on people's health or lives or their property,
they just let it go, right?
They just let it go. And so whenever it rains, I can't help but think somewhere there might be lightning. And I mean, if it gets smoky, our summers have been ruined so many times in my lifetime because the smoke from the fire and them just letting them burn, which I understand why they do, from a cost perspective. It could be hundreds of miles away, much the same as you've probably been affected by fires in Canada before, in California.
Absolutely.
And we have been in Alaska from Russia. I mean, depending on the draft of the wind, it
especially
could be
the
hundreds
last
of
20 years, we've had horrible forest fires that go from Canada and that's would burn the whole northern hemisphere and then come into the States in Colorado or Washington or into Oregon or even Northern California. Down here in Southern California, we've had plenty of brush fires and a lot of people have lost their homes. The Malibu fire is always very famous, of course, and then you never know when the canyons are going to burn. Luckily, thank gosh, where I live, I'm far enough away from all of the brush or the type of fire hazard areas. I'm not in the canyon. I did live in the canyon at one point. I was always lucky that there was never a fire for those 5 years I was up there, because there's only one way in and one way out. And that's where it gets kind of scary, that you may not be able to get out if there were to be a disaster. I'm going to switch gears for a second. I remember when I was on the, I guess when I was snowboard, the snowmobile, the guy who led that tour, that little day thing, he was also into hunting, and he was talking about all the different hunting and how the animals come out and they shoot the animal just as it's waking up, especially a bear coming out of its den for the first time in 6 months after hibernation. I love animals too much, and it bothers me. I'm not a hunter, but even though I know that you guys up there are into sport, but you're still killing an animal, even though there's an excess in the population. But you've got the moose, you've got the caribou, you've got the bears, you've got deer. What else do you have up there? I didn't see anything. Maybe I was in the wrong area, but the polar bears are where compared to Fairbanks? Because I certainly didn't go in that direction. Yeah. I didn't see the glaciers. I was in a whole nother world.
Yeah, that's a whole nother trip you'll have to do, is seeing glaciers and whatnot down more the Anchorage area, and a lot of places you can connect to from there, which is more where the big tours, you come in on your cruise down that way, and then you take the train to Fairbanks, and you spend, I believe most of them are less than 2 nights, might be 2 nights and 3 days. But so our summers, while our winters are much more severe than like Anchorage, our summers are much nicer than Anchorage, because Anchorage stays on that pretty wet weather, precipitation.
I can hear the rain.
Much more close to Seattle, yeah, as it rains more. But
you got that, Rebel? Go on.
Is it super evident that it's
yeah, it's cute. I just think it's cute. Go on. It's just adding some ambiance. Go on.
But no, yeah, it's the different levels of tourism with a state this size. I forget the stats. I know you could fit 2 Texases inside Alaska, but I believe Rhode Island, it was something, however many thousands. I mean, it's such a massive place until you're actually here and can experience it. And even then, it's hard to really fathom if you're only in the main areas. And so...
Okay, now your camera has a wet spot. It's got a drop of water. We can't see you. We've got wet spot. That's the wet spot. Okay, there we go.
But yeah, I mean, it's the magnitude of how large it is. It's just, you really can't.
I had no idea till I actually got there. I mean, I've seen it on the map all my life. I remember when Alaska became a state and I was a little girl. But once I got there and really looked closely to maps, even when I was up the Dalton Highway, to see how far I had traveled from Fairbanks to Coldfoot, and saw the whole pattern, saw the pipeline, and then way over here is other parts of Alaska, and way down there are the Aleutian Islands. It's like, oh my God, I really got a perspective as to the massiveness of it's like a country. You guys are huge. You're huge. And yet you literally have, yeah. I met somebody in Coldfoot that was from, what's the name of the town straight at the top where the pipeline starts that you were mentioning, right at the water? Is it what ocean is that up there at the end? What is at the top?
Arctic.
The Arctic. So, okay. So he was from that, and he had 4 children, and they came into Coldfoot, and he was real excited to let us know that he's from that area. And then he traveled 400 miles to get here, to be in Coldfoot, to do whatever. And yet what it was like up there, indigenous. And he talked about his family and the oil and the culture. It was really interesting because it's so diverse. It's so different. But you know what? Everybody's friendly.
And so speaking about, though, your referencing of love of animals and hunting.
Yeah.
Up there, they're hunting whales. And it's a huge thing. They refer to it as a harvest if they can get one. And so we're talking about whales that are bigger than a school bus. and they're still going out in little boats that are like
There's no law against the whales?
no, like it's like a godsend in their eyes to their culture to be able to get a whale. And so it's like to be a hunting captain of one of those boats is a huge thing. And it's interesting because they harpoon them, but then they shoot. It's a literal man-made bomb of some sort that explodes inside the whale once it's harpooned, because they're so massive. Just harpooning it's not enough.
No.
So you're trying to put it out of its misery, but then the attraction of the polar bears to that free extra food to them, that's why those places up there, they literally have positions that are for hire constantly for polar bear watch, because if you get a harvest of a whale, it's this huge celebration of getting all of the meat from it, and to their credit, nothing goes wasted.
Have you ever eaten whale yourself, Devin?
Like maybe once, and it was not something I was a big fan of. Definitely like a major part of their diets, very rich in like oil and different things. But they're gigantic. We're talking, like its back laying flat is like 15 feet high. They're massive. But what that can do for their village, as far as feeding people for quote unquote free, because you're getting it from the ocean, there's all sorts of interesting.
That's interesting. I've never heard that story or anything about that. Okay,
you'll have to look up whale hunting.
Okay.
Later on your own time, but it's very interesting. And like to be the captain of one of the boats, like females are attracted to you and want to have like your babies because of how important that is to them, and like the notoriety of their skills essentially for their culture, especially a place that hunts whales. Like that's extremely, it's just totally different. So that's how big Alaska is. I know nothing about whale hunting other than what I just explained to you, which is mostly from seeing videos or whatever. But I mean, that's how massive our state is, that this corridor of the state, never been to, same over here, but have been well traveled throughout. It's just so massive, and it's so expensive to travel throughout. Personally, I'd rather go to Los Angeles or Hawaii than fly to Ketchikan and go somewhere within Alaska that's going to cost me more.
I get it. You coming down here anytime soon? I know your sister's down here.
I don't have set plans. She'd always love a visit, and between you and other friends there and concerts and sporting events, those are things.
Dodgers are playing. Yeah, it's Dodger time.
Those are things that I'm more interested in. I'm the kind of born in a small place, attracted to the city life. If a lot of people would hate the city life and want to live in a cabin, with no one nearby, I'm more opposite. I because of our lack of opportunity of any pro sports teams, as a big sports fan.
Yeah, you are.
I'm attracted to that. And a place like Los Angeles, I might be able to see a game and a concert in the same day, or I know I could. It just depends on if it's someone I'm interested or not.
Right.
So all of my travel generally is planned around a sporting event, a concert, a festival, or both. Because like you were saying, we got one bowling alley, we got a library, a movie theater, and then you have various, activities. You could go play a sport like a softball league or something like that, which is generally going to be once a week. There's nothing else to do. And within reason, of course, you could go hiking every day or go fishing or something like that. But
not everybody's that ambitious to get out and go do it. And you got to stay home, or you're online, or you're watching something. There's tons of movies. And like you were saying before, we become more reclusive. We're more computer dependent on our phones. You drive a lot, you're outside a lot, you know the weather conditions, you know how to get around. And when you're isolating or you're keeping to yourself, you do, but you know also how to get out when you have to get out. And you're balanced. You know how to live your life in Alaska. A lot of people have never been or never will go to Alaska. But
for sure. So you've lived here and, like I said, tell people you're from here when traveling, or
they call you Alaska.
Cool. It is cool and you feel proud about it. And I always like to mention to folks, like, I consider myself the term native to Alaska. And to some people that's offensive for some reason that are actually indigenous, but I think it's being perceived incorrectly, because in the same breath, I'll make sure to say, I'm a native to Alaska, that I'm born here, but I'm not indigenously Alaskan.
Right, you qualify it. You qualify it. We have 5 minutes left. It's gone really fast. That's what happens. We just keep talking. Next thing you know, we're jumping around. But to go back to the animals for just a moment, do you ever hunt? Do you go out and hunt, or is that something that isn't of interest to you? I don't know. I've gone skeet shooting. That was the only gun I ever shot. I have had a Glock and all that, but to go out and say, oh, there's a deer, there's a moose, or there's a caribou, or there's a bear. And I know there's an abundance. And when I was on the plane up to Alaska, I sat next to somebody who explained to me that there's no shortage of polar bears. Don't watch the commercials where there's one solo bear on a plank of ice, starving, without any other animal around. A lot of it's marketing to donate to the Wildlife Foundation or whatever it is. But with all the bears and all the other animals up there, I guess people like the guy that was on the tour, he told me how much he feeds his family. He's got 3 or 4 kids, and how, one animal, you cut it up right, and you can store it for the whole winter and summer. You will feed your family quite well. And I understand that. I mean, I eat meat, I eat fish. It was live at one point, but I can't go out and kill it. I don't want to know about that part of it. But I know it's sport, and I know it's big in Alaska. And I give you guys credit if that's what you want to do. Last question about the Northern Lights. Are the Northern Lights still visible now at this point in time, or does it have to be as dark as it was when I was there watching for it? Do you still see them now? We lost your audio. We lost his audio. Oh, he's Devin, yeah. There you go.
That must have been from a raindrop, because I didn't touch it. But,
yeah.
No, you for sure can't see them anymore. Late March, sometimes up through middle April, but I always say in the springtime, the best season to see it would be like beginning of March through, I'd say, the first week of April. And then on the back end, the fall Northern Light season would be more like all of September to middle October.
Okay.
And then basically being too cold can negatively affect them. And so it's not impossible that we won't see them, because it's not always freezing cold here. I mean, our winter can be like more mild than some years, et cetera, but generally the tourism season for such would just be kind of those smaller windows that kind of closer to the end of winter and then the very beginning.
That's why I came mid-March, because I did the research and they said it would be peaking, and I would watch the website talking visibility, low, medium, moderate, high, whatever. And somehow I got lucky. First 2 nights, didn't know how to look for them. Third night in Wiseman, I did. And then the 4th night we were up in Wiseman, there was nothing. But when I got back to Fairbanks Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, I think I saw them all 3 nights, especially the night before I left. And you said get out there, and I stayed out there till like 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. They're gorgeous. I have a ton of pictures. I still look at them. We're out of time. I'm going to thank you for taking some time to talk to us about living in Alaska, especially when you've got daylight now for the next 2.5 months of your life and things that are going on. I want you to stay backstage. If people want to know more about what it's like in Alaska, come to me and I'll get you to him, and he can help you even plan a trip or take you around or whatever you need to know about the Fairbanks area. Devin, I'll see you backstage. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dr. Linda Salvin. This is the end of the Psychic Solutions podcast. I want to thank you for joining me today. And I'll be back tomorrow. I've got Storm Monroe coming on, and we're going to be talking about how to find your purpose. So you'll tune in tomorrow. This will be up on your YouTube, Facebook, iTunes, iHeart, Dr. Linda Radio, and everything else in about, anywhere from now to 72 hours from now. Thank you for joining us. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed Dr. Linda Salvin's Psychic Solutions podcast. You can reach Dr. Linda at 888-509-1077 or at lindasalvin.com. Need a breakthrough of your own? Ready for answers or insights nobody else has? Reserve your own one-on-one in-person chat. Dr. Linda isn't just for other people. Dr. Linda gets results for you. And it's easy. Contact details are on screen now. Just click on lindasalvin.com or call toll-free 888-509-1077. That's lindasalvin.com or toll-free at 888-509-1077.